I would ground us in Tennessee in three pieces. It was first from the preparation component. We fundamentally believe that registered teacher apprentices have access to, are guaranteed a different and more robust training experience. Apprenticeship is colloquially recognized in Tennessee. A lot of our rural districts understand that at a deeper and wider meaning than maybe what they would have understood was happening in EPPs before. And so that true preparation that can happen through the on-the-job guarantee of an apprentice was a real talking point for us in certain parts of our state. I would say the second piece is the brass tacks, the finances of it. And I know folks are talking about enrollment or declinement or kind of whatever version of the expenses hasn't changed. The appetite has. And is there some wiggle room or connection point we can have here? Apprentices, regardless of the profession, cannot pay a dime, a nickel, or a dollar out of pocket. And so to be able to recruit teachers for any of our apprenticeship pathways, and they earn and learn at no cost to them, that changes a recruitment strategy for an entire state. I think the other piece of that we'll talk very candidly, though, is that cost didn't disappear. So where did it go? How do we invite EPPs into that financial conversation, not shy away from it in Tennessee? The other piece we'll talk very specifically is how we had to have our partners at labor understand the scale and impact this could be if they were willing to partner with us. And that literally looked like an MOU that we announced 2 weeks ago for a percentage held, a percentage set aside for their apprenticeship funding every single year, because we know how important this work is. So that was the second. We did preparation, we did financial. And the third, I would say representation. In Tennessee, our student population is changing and our educator population has not kept up with that. And so for us to give, in many ways, keys to the classroom of candidates who have been in buildings, who districts have identified as phenomenal leaders, and have the true path at no cost that is a better version for some districts of preparation, those are different ways we could really target some of the messaging components that people were talking about or kind of wandering through for partnership. I think some of the pieces that we found were so important for a registered teacher occupation apprenticeship, particularly when it comes to the EPP side of the conversation, is reemphasizing that this is a competency-based program, not a time-bound program. And so when we think about what needs to be true of a teacher apprentice at the end of their program, it is all of the elements of a strong K-12 teacher we can point to, not because they checked all of the tally marks of the hours they accrued. I think that's a big shift for some of our EPPs, particularly as they are trying to right size between residency or internship or clinical or job embedded. And so re-emphasizing that partnership between districts and EPPs needs to emphasize that mentor component and that competency-based element, not so much the logging of every single hour, particularly on some of the financial components and strategies we've employed. But I would say that second bullet point was probably the biggest win for us as of recent. An MOU, again, between Tennessee Department of Labor Workforce Development and TDOE to ensure that every single year, regardless of a governor's priorities, regardless of a legislative cycle, every single year, 10% of their apprenticeship funding in that state recurring amount would be set aside for teachers. Again, that changes the way by which our local teams, we have 9 local workforce boards who report up to the state. That changes the partnership and relationship we now have with them for the better. That changes the type of technical assistance and frequency we're able to experience from the Tennessee Department of Labor Workforce Development. And that demonstration of importance, I think, just from the commissioner and cabinet level to the governor, was really important from a recruitment standpoint from our state as well. We actually offered EPPs a head start before our districts to engage in what it would look like in building these programs, because I think we knew that they were going to need that extra time or that extra conversation institutionally, given the policies and elements that they would need to navigate. We actually created an application, and I'll share the link. It's featured in this next slide. And you can see that our application was EPP driven, so that an institution could talk about how they understood the needs assessment of their own, perhaps, data internally at a school, or their declining enrollment, or what partners they really continue to thrive with versus struggle with at a district level. You see that we had them articulate their budget model. What is an institution were they willing to commit? If it's, and I'll use the example of Vanderbilt University, who's not a part of this work, and that's a $50,000 sticker price every single year. How would we right size that program against a $10,000 University of Memphis program? Really inviting EPPs again into the transparency of this conversation, not trying to hide away from the reality of the costs. Of course, impact measurement. And then I think the last piece that you're seeing is the assurances from data sharing, on the job, partnership expectations. What was going to feel different about these cohorts of grow your own teacher apprentices, separate from the way that I would have experienced an EPP as a traditional college student?